Hey Emma,
Yes, Balin.
what do you call it when you pull the immortal bloodsucker that you really want?
I don't know. What do you call it?
Gotcha, vampire! Hello and welcome to Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
You like that one?
Yeah, that's literally what you'd call it. You're right.
I sort of meant to be like, what would you say? Like, gotcha. But I didn't say it that way. So, it still made you laugh. Top tier Talk This joke for me.
I do think it's funny when you just have, like, facts. Like, just, like, statements, and you present them as jokes. Those ones really work for me for some reason.
Thanks. Good. I'll keep that in mind moving forward. Well, folks, I'm your factual host, Madelyn.
I'm your, other host, Emma.
I love that you're just always the other host.
I can never think of anything on the fly. I'm your fictional host, Emma.
There we go.
Never been here.
I just do two voices and make fun of tell myself that my jokes are terrible every week.
You should probably talk to somebody about that, not me. You know.
But see, like, now, I'm pretty self-aware about it, clearly. Anyway, this week on the show, we're going to be talking about Vampire the Masquerade and Genshin Impact. So, it's going to be an interesting... I think that there's a mashup to be made here, preliminarily.
Sure,
but we'll see.
Gotcha vampires.
It's already
made
done.
it already.
I've already created it.
You did it.
So let's dive into the deep world of vampire fun.
Let's do it.
So, Vampire the Masquerade is originally a tabletop RPG from White Wolf that came out in 1991. And then, of course, was adapted into the first of several video games inspired by the series in the year 2000.
Is there a series?
There's some games. They're not made by the same people, really. They're loosely connected because White Wolf has to approve and,
the
canonize
tabletop
them.
games.
What?
You're saying there's multiple tabletop games?
No, I'm saying there's multiple video games, too.
Oh, really?
I hope we looked at the same game.
Bloodlines?
Is it Bloodlines that we were supposed to talk about? I have a bunch of research on Redemption, too, so it's going to be a fun time in the Vampire the Masquerade discussion this week, isn't it?
Oh. Well, the more you know.
The first game, Vampire the Masquerade Redemption, came out in 2000, and then Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines came out as a loosely tied sequel. It's not really a sequel, it just indirect exists in the same world, technically interacts with it because the game company has to say everything is canon. That came out in 2004. So let me give a little background, I guess, on Redemption, and then we can talk about cult classic Bloodlines.
Yeah, I mean that's the one that's on there because it's the classic, I guess. So
fair enough. Well, in some ways, I think Redemption was actually a much more successful game, at least in its time, because it wasn't released totally unfinished.
Sure.
But so Redemption is from Nihilistic Software, and then Activision is the publisher, which is like a former LucasArts team, basically. And you're this, like, 12th century French crusader who, like, you're a very religious knight, and then becoming a vampire destroys your faith, and across time and space, you follow your true love, this nun who loved you even when you became a vampire. And the cool thing about that game that doesn't come up in Bloodlines, this is the one thing I'll talk about here, and then we can talk about Bloodlines, is they have this, like, super dope kind of multiplayer mode that's kind of more based on the tabletop game. It's called the Storyteller system, which is what the gameplay system that the tabletop is based on is called. Not, like, literally, that's not me saying that, like, the RPG is about storytelling. It's, like, White Wolf's, like, D&D style system, right? It's called the Storyteller system. Just wanted to be clear that I wasn't being like, oh, it's storytelling. like tabletop, where you tell stories.
Yeah, no, I understood at least. You're right.
Where in that one of the players plays as the storyteller, and so they have control of like placing items and monsters and characters, and they can modify character statistics and like type into the game and play as any character at any time. So it's a very kind of a neat way of bridging, at least for 2002, or I'm sorry, just for the year 2000 technology, what the tabletop experience is and bringing that to a video game in a way that I thought was very unique relative to other things that I've seen from games that are adapted from a tabletop world. So Redemption was pretty successful, which is why Bloodlines got made. Totally different studio, just Activision had the license, and so they were like, oh, this game sold pretty well. Let's have somebody else make another one.
Yeah.
And that's where Bloodlines came from.
There's something with that that's a little bit... I don't know. I guess it depends on where the idea comes from. But, like, there's this news this week of, like, the original creator of Little Nightmares is like, I don't want to make any more. But the publisher's like, we're making more. With or without you, because we own it. Which is, like, an interesting situation there that I haven't thought about before.
Yeah, it is kind of... it's a little uncomfortable. I mean, probably given what happened to Troika throughout the process of creating Bloodlines, I can't imagine... Nihilistic also doesn't exist anymore, I don't think, but I can't imagine they were too sad to have been passed over for it.
Yeah.
But it is definitely still kind of a weird thing, because they did pretty much decide right away. This was not a situation where it's like... sometimes things get handed off to different developers because it's been 10 years or somebody new has bought the rights or whatever. In this case, Activision seemingly was just like, oh, this went pretty well. Let's do another one, but with someone else.
Yeah.
So you want to intro Bloodlines then?
Sure. I think these are funny a little bit. I'm sure there's a lot of games based off RPGs that I don't know, but I keep thinking of them as, like, Vampire Cyberpunk 2077.
Yeah.
But anyway, Bloodlines was in 2004, developed by Troika. You play as a human who is turned into a vampire by... a lady vampire who apparently wasn't supposed to do that, because I'm pretty sure she's pretty quickly summarily executed.
Yeah, the vampires are supposed to be keeping a low profile, so naturally turning somebody into a vampire without permission is kind of bad form.
Yeah. So I don't know what that lady lady vampire was thinking. But you turn into a vampire and they let you stay as a vampire. So you're part of, like, you choose which, like, family affiliation you want at the beginning. That sort of affects, like, what sort of character you are, like whether you're strong or charismatic or I guess there's 7, I'm sorry. But there's different, like, areas that have, like, different focuses based on how you want to play your character. So at the beginning you can either actually set up your character skill tree for yourself, like get like a virtual paper and set it up, or you can just like answer a like series of weird quiz questions and they'll set it up for you. One of the examples I saw was like, you were a victim of a mugging last night, it wasn't that bad, but you want to make sure like you can handle yourself if it doesn't happen again. And all 3 of them are like violent. Like one is like, you take a karate class so you can snap their spine next time, or get a knife so that you can gut them out next time, or get a gun so they can be like sidewalk food next time or something. So it's much like colorful sort of quiz to set your character up. But basically, for all this setup, you're a new vampire in it's Los Angeles, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. You're a new vampire in contemporary Los Angeles, and you're going around doing vampire things, and there's, stories to get involved in. That's my setup of the game.
Yeah. Overall, I mean, you can already sort of hear just Emma's description of it, but you can imagine how many of these things, such as the clans and such as literally that you can fill out your traits like you would in a tabletop thing, are pulled pretty directly from the tabletop game and the tabletop setup, which I always think is sort of interesting. I think we've talked about this before, but the fact that we refer to all of these different games as RPGs, when in many ways so many of them have moved away from what would recognizably be, like, if you're familiar with RPGs in video games, you would not recognizably really be able to move to playing a tabletop RPG. It would be a very different experience for you, for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, we tend to ascribe RPG to anything that has, like, level up and stat systems now.
Yeah.
Which is not entirely what makes up a tabletop RPG.
But in this game, like, as we said, there's kind of two factions of vampires, more or less. I mean, there's clans, right? But there are vampires that are trying to stay hidden, and there are vampires that want to take over the world. And as in both the 2000 game and in the tabletop game, there's kind of this morality system that deals with your humanity, and the more, patently evil things that you do. I mean, mostly the more you drink innocent people's blood, I think. The less humanity you have, and that affects, the ending of the game and you as a character.
Yeah. Also, if you have too little humanity, it can, like, increase your chance of, like, I can't remember what it's actually called, but you can, like, go into, like, a rage state sort of randomly, which can be really inconvenient if you're in some place where you don't want that to happen. Yeah. So having too low humanity can also be a problem to sort of dissuade you from just drinking the blood of everybody around you, I assume.
So the development for Bloodlines was just patently a mess, more or less. And pretty much seemingly destroyed Troika Games. Like, this game ended the studio, pretty much. Like, I was reading about it, it just seems like everything that could possibly go wrong or be mismanaged was. So they were using the Source engine, right, which is Valve's Half-Life 2 engine, but it wasn't done. So they were using this unfinished engine, and they were having to write their own code for things that the engine couldn't do that they wanted the game to do, but the code didn't always interact super well with the engine, so the game turned out to be very buggy. And then also it didn't have a producer for a full year of its, like, 3-year development. And eventually Activision fixed that, but when they came in, they found all this stuff. It's like, stuff is unfinished, or they've been... I feel like this is the classic... something is going to be stuck in development hell forever when it's described as all of these processes that they've been tinkering with forever and refining forever, but were never finished. I feel like that's always the hallmark of this game is going to take 20 years.
Well, I mean, that's just a symptom of not having a producer.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
The producer is the person that's meant to be there to be like, stop.
Yeah.
This is what we're doing.
Yep.
We're making this. And if you don't have that person on your team, you're just going to be tinkering with the same thing forever because no one tells you when to stop.
Yeah. So it's important to have that person there to tell you when to stop, in case you hadn't picked up on that. And then eventually, in the end, Activision was like, okay, like, you do eventually have to release this game. So, like, you're going to release this game on this date no matter what. And I think they managed ultimately to negotiate a little bit more time because they weren't allowed to release the game before Half-Life 2 came out because the engine was brand new. So they were able to, like, bully Activision into giving them, persuade Activision to give them a little more money and a little more time. But still, ultimately, there was a date where they were just like, it's gonna go out. And the game was not really finished.
Yeah. Part of the problem, too, is that Troika is, like, 30 people.
Right.
And we're also working on other projects.
Yeah.
During this time.
Yes, so at some point, Activision, like, bought them out. They're like, okay, here's some money to finish the other game. Like, please get everybody working on this.
Yeah, I think it was something for, like, Atari
Yeah.
So, like, they didn't even have their full, like, 30-person team working on this pretty darn ambitious and large
Incredibly
game.
ambitious for 2004.
Yeah. With all the sprawling systems and stuff going on. Their full team was not able to be working on it, so... And even if just, like, 30 people on it, feels like that's not enough people to be working on this.
Yeah, it was super narratively complex. It had real-time combat. They were trying to do, like, customized facial animations, all the voiceover for NPCs. Like, it's incredibly ambitious, incredibly complicated game. Even by the standards of, like, probably, like, 2010, to be honest.
Yeah.
And they're trying to make this in 2004 with, like, half of a 30-person team.
Yeah.
With no producer.
Yeah.
So, understandably, it released a bit of a buggy mess.
It also released pretty soon near Half-Life 2.
Yeah,
so.
Near Half-Life, near some kind of Metal Gear Solid. Really just, like, even if this game was going to work, it would have gotten eaten alive by Half-Life, probably just about no matter what.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, this game, well, apparently it got okay reviews, which was something that sort of surprised me. I think now about the kind of reviews that very buggy games on launch get. And I mean, I don't know. It's not entirely true, but sometimes anyway, or at least the response to very buggy games can be very focused on those bugs.
Sure. I mean, but at the same time, like, you get... Like, the issue with the Cyberpunk recently was that the reviews were very good for what was a very buggy game.
No, that... I'm not saying there's the opposite isn't also true. But I do feel like bugginess has become sort of more of a flashpoint in a way that isn't necessarily about the game. It's about people being angry about games being released.
Yeah, I would just say I tend to see that not from reviews.
That's
so
fair. That
it's not really from critical response. That's like the online culture in general. So I don't think necessarily it would have gotten very different reviews now.
That's fair.
What I read about it was most of the reviews were like, well, there's definitely some technical issues, but they're very impressed with sort of the narrative ambition of it. Mm-hmm. And that was what was in the reviews. Was like, it's very cool, but it's kind of messy.
So after release, I mean, it sold really badly, right? It sold really badly. It killed the studio. Like, basically as a result of this game releasing so buggy, Troika couldn't get any other work.
Yeah.
So the studio died. But over time, it definitely became a bit of a cult classic for being so ambitious and ahead of its time in that narrative and interactivity space. And so as a result of that, there's been a lot of fan work on the game, which seemingly has been endorsed and even supported in terms of providing resources by former developers, which is kind of neat. And eventually made the game not just more playable, but also restoring content that had been cut or adding content in to make it more like what the game was actually intended to be.
Yeah. Yeah, there's at least like one like unofficial patch that makes the game pretty much like playable, at least. There are definitely some systems that still are just broken. The stealth in particular seems to be
just
random.
Making a stealth game is impossible. I'm gonna put that out there. That's my bold take of the episode. How many successful stealth games are there on the market? Like half a dozen total?
Yeah, but I mean, it's not a stealth game though. It's not. It's like that's one system. Every third-person action game has a stealth system now that works fine.
I know. I'm sorry.
This one's like, you're in the darkness, literally the person's looking away and somehow they detect you. And sometimes you're in the light, the person's looking directly at you and they don't detect you. So, like, just that system, I'm just saying that system's broken.
Right.
Beyond what the unofficial patch fixes.
Fair enough.
That's all I'm trying to say.
I just meant to say, even in stealth systems that work well, they're not that fun. Why would you ever opt into a stealth system?
Don't speak for me.
I'm just saying. I said, I'm just saying.
I'd only play stealth.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I just feel like it never works well enough. I don't know. That's just me. But see, in Vampire...
As soon as violence breaks out in any sort of third-person thing, I die because I can't think fast enough. So I have to do stealth.
See, this is why Vampire the Masquerade is a fun game. Or an interesting game, at least. Because you can definitely play it in different ways.
Sure.
Also, one of the characters' name is LaCroix.
Yes.
Founder of the Seltzer Empire, probably.
The names do not seem to have any sort of, like, consistent theming.
That tracks for a tabletop RPG. Your party.
There's, like, LaCroix, and then there's, like...
Jack.
Yeah. Big somebody. I can't remember what the name is. It's just, like, Big Sean or something.
Again, realistic. Like, if you have ever played a tabletop game with people, that is how the naming goes. It's like somebody is, Arlequette of Chanderfield. And then somebody is like Big Chunga.
Yeah.
The dwarf.
Yeah. Anyway, Bloodlines 2 has been in development for a while now, so that's not super promising.
There's another one. There's 2 Vampire the Masquerade sequels slated to come out in 2021 from different studios.
What's the other one?
The other one is called Vampire the Masquerade Swan Song.
Oh.
It's set in Boston. Whereas
Why
Bloodlines
would you want to be
2,
a vampire in Boston?
I don't know. Why would you be a vampire in... Well, I guess...
We don't do anything in Boston.
But see, then it's not suspicious when you only come out at night, I guess. Sunset's early.
It is suspicious. Nobody's out at night in Boston.
But see, then that's fine. No one will notice you being a vampire.
I don't think that's how it works.
Bloodlines 2 is in Seattle, which I was about to say, why would you be a vampire in Seattle? But then I remembered famous vampire series. Twilight, which is not it. It's in Washington, right? So it's already been well explained why you might be a vampire in Seattle, because it's cloudy and there's no sun. Which I thought would apply to Boston, too, but I guess not.
I mean, it's cloudy. Sure. I just mean, like, if you could be a vampire in, like, LA, or, somewhere nice, why would you come to Boston?
Do vampires
to be cold all the time?
Weather in the same way as humans do, though?
What do you, like, they don't, like, rain, they can't feel rain? Is that...
Maybe they're not bothered by it. I don't know. Does the cold bother vampires?
They have to shovel out their driveway, Why would you choose to do that if you're a vampire?
You could use your powers. Somebody's got to have, like, a fire discipline, right? That was, like, a thing. You can, like, add different powers.
I think your neighbors would be a little suspicious if you're like, yeah, I just took the flamethrower to the snow.
As if anyone in Boston would say anything. They'd just be like, park the car in the flaming
Harvard
Harvard
you're right.
Yard.
That's all people in Boston are capable of saying.
I said flaming Harvard
line.
Yard.
Okay. Anything else to say about this?
I'll be interested to see, clearly over time this series, I mean, both the games in the early 2000s still pay a lot of respect to their tabletop origins, and the developers on both of those talked a lot about kind of literally, like, going through the tabletop game. And I wonder how much in the sequels, I guess, that are in development, that will still feel like something that is not just not even necessary, because obviously it's not necessary anymore, but even wanted. Now that game RPGs have so much developed their own traditions, I guess, will you even want to create a game that feels more like you're literally building your character sheet?
I mean, everybody, Disco Elysium was really popular, is really popular, so...
I didn't mean to say that that's not something that they will do. I'll just be interested, you know.
Oh, I'm sorry, I heard the question is, do people want that anymore?
That's part of the question, but I just mean to say, if you were developing a new Vampire the Masquerade game, I'll be interested to see if what they're doing is, we're interested in the story of this world, or if what they're doing is, we're interested in the mechanics of this world. Because both of the games that, you know, released in the early 2000s were very much interested in adapting the mechanics of the tabletop game. Whereas,
I guess, but for the purpose of story, right? Like, that's the whole point of them. I don't fully understand what you're asking. Let's move on.
That's fine.
Let's move on to Genshin Impact. Tell us about Genshin Impact, Madelyn.
Yeah, so Genshin Impact came out in September of 2020, so that's about 6 months old now. And it's a free-to-play open-world RPG powered by lots of gacha pulls from MiHoYo, which is a Chinese game development studio.
Yes. Also made Honkai Impact, so...
Only Impact games.
Only Impact games.
And yeah, it's out on Windows, it's out on PS4, and you can play it on mobile.
Burn your phone to ashes on mobile.
Look, a lot of people have talked about it as, like, you know, kind of a revolution for mobile games, so I had to mention that it's on mobile, although I am not myself. I mean, my phone can barely handle me browsing the internet for more than 10 minutes without getting very hot, so...
Yeah.
My phone cannot go out into the winter.
Yeah, no, I'm not, it's impressive that it can run on mobile at all. It's just, like, I can't imagine how pleasant that would be.
It's, you know, it's hard for me to conceptualize. My iPhone is now four and a half years old. My phone. It can't go out in the cold. Like, literally, I walk around with it in the cold, and it drops to 1% battery, just by default. Like, that's the phone that I'm working with. So it's hard for me to, like, conceptualize, like, what would a brand new iPhone, like, how would that do running this?
Sure, yeah.
So I'll give the benefit of the doubt. But certainly, yes, this is not, I mean, whatever. Personally, I prefer to play games on consoles anyway, but even if I was a mobile person, I think that my phone would spontaneously combust.
Yeah.
Trying to run Genshin Impact. So you've probably heard of it as, like, a Breath of the Wild, like.
Which just, like, that feels... Like, it definitely takes aesthetic sensibility from Breath of the Wild. But, I mean, does it really, like, play like Breath of the Wild? It doesn't look like it does.
There are definite similarities. I mean, certainly, like you said, the aesthetics of the world have that kind of same... Not exactly. I mean, I don't know. I didn't play that much Breath of the Wild. But being in the city that I've run around in feels a little bit more built out than any of the Breath of the Wild encampments that I found. That may or may not be actually true. Maybe there are more involved cities that I just couldn't stay focused long enough to find. But you have the same stamina meter. You can cook recipes on fires and, like, pick up ingredients. You have a glider. I mean, it's wings in Genshin Impact, but you do have a glider type thing. I wouldn't say I've played enough. And in some ways, the feel of battling these kind of, like, goblin guys, the camps that they have and the look of some of the creatures isn't that different from the boblins or whatever they were called in Breath of the Wild.
Sure.
So I can see. I don't think it's totally an inapt comparison, especially in terms of talking about, you know, Breath of the Wild as being kind of revolutionary for consoles in some ways. Not exactly, but for Switch anyway.
It is something I'm really... I feel like this would take some, like, research and looking more into games, but, like, just in the same way that, like, certain games are like, wow, that looks like Persona 5 now. I'm very curious to see if the systems in Breath of the Wild are actually, like, if any of them are actually, like, revolutionary. Because when you think about them, it's like, oh, you can cook? Okay. I'm pretty sure you could do that in games before, right? Like, glider, maybe? Feels like there should have been a game that had a glider. But maybe they were just their first ones to be like, glider. It just feels like one of those games that have become so, like, ubiquitous that now every time there's something that's like, oh, you can cook in it, just like Breath of the Wild. You know? I did think it was really funny in the Direct when they were, like, presenting Skyward Sword. There's like, it's like Breath of the Wild. If you like Breath of the Wild, this has got some stuff that Breath of the Wild had.
This has got some stuff that Breath of the Wild did better. Here it is.
I thought that was
the
funny.
beta test. No, it's not so much. I mean, I think I agree with you. Of course, many other games, and probably many other games had most of those systems. But I think that this game having all of those and also having a similar aesthetic, and, well, I mean, in some ways, and also the developers being very open about being inspired by Breath of the Wild.
Sure, yeah.
Certainly, it asks for those comparisons. And frankly, well, I would say overall it probably benefits from those comparisons. There are certainly some people who are going to be like, oh, I've already played Breath of the Wild. Why would I play this? But getting your game your free-to-play mobile game compared to Breath of the Wild in a way that wasn't people, like, literally laughing you out the door, is probably some great marketing hype that somebody, I hope, got a bonus for deciding that the developers were going to talk about being inspired by that game.
Sure.
I hope that whole team has gotten a bonus or two, frankly, given how the game has done.
Yeah.
So Genshin Impact, just to give a little overview, other than saying it's a lot like Breath of the Wild, because that's not very useful, is it? It's set in this fantasy world of Teyvat. There's going to be there's just a lot of, like, fantasy names.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, whereas Vampire the Masquerade has names that feel like, they're, like, RPG names. Whereas, like, sometimes they're a little bit overly, like, European and overly, like, stylized. And sometimes they're very, like, huh. Whereas this one has this, like, very... I don't even know how to, like, talk about fantasy naming conventions. But, like, you know when you see it, right?
Yeah.
Anyway. And it has, like, these 7 nations, this world, that's ruled by some gods that deal with elements, right? And at the beginning, it throws you right into the middle of the action. You and your twin have landed on this world. You're, like, not from this world. And you get to pick which twin you're gonna be. I played as the girl presenting twin. And the other one gets taken away and disappears, and you're trying to find your twin with the help of your mysterious floating companion, Paimon.
Yeah, your food supply.
That is what I said.
Yeah.
Yes. Not my mascot, my emergency food, Paimon.
Yeah. Yes.
You'll all be pleased to know you get to name your character. So I thought for a little bit about naming my character Champ McDude. But I didn't. And then I thought about naming it Champ McTude, but I've decided to save that for if anyone in this household plays Persona 5 Royal. It'll be Champ McTude. Just for continuity's sake. And then I was like, okay, so we'll do, like, a Champ McDude style name. So I was gonna do Buddy McPal, I think. Buddy McPal, is that what I was doing? No, maybe Buddy McGall. I can't remember. I debated between those two. I think I had decided McPal sounded kind of weird. But then you can't have a space in your name. So it's just Buddy Gal. Which somebody promptly told me didn't sound like it was a name from around here. And I was like, okay.
Hey, they're not wrong.
Like, I'm not from around here, Jane.
I do always think it's funny when stories, like, have that line in there, especially if you, like, accidentally name your character the same as somebody else.
Yeah.
Like, I remember, like, Fire Emblem 7, like, you can name your character, like, Lynn, and when you wake up, Lynn will be like, huh, that's a weird name.
She's got some internalized feelings.
Sure. So what I'm saying is you should have named it, like, you should have named yourself Paimon.
It feels like if you name yourself Paimon, the game should have some custom text.
It does feel that way. But that's the question. You have to test it. You know?
I'm sure someone has tested it, and I'm sure it doesn't. And Paimon, like, frankly, who the heck is Paimon anyway? I have no idea.
Some sort of weird floating baby.
Everybody seems to be pretty chill with Paimon, but, like, what? Paimon speaks in the third person all the time and floats around and just mysteriously pops in and out of being. So, like, but we're all fine with that. Meanwhile, Buddy Gal has to deal with microaggressions about her name.
Well, I guess that means Paimon's normal in the world that you're in, right?
I guess. Everybody seemed pretty freaked out by someone who
Paimons?
could speak to dragons. That wasn't normal, but Paimon's normal?
I don't know. I don't know the rules of this world, Madelyn.
Me either. I've only played... So this is the game I played this time because it was free to play. I managed to not sink any money into it of yet. We'll see if I continue to hold out. And Genshin Impact has been wildly successful.
Yeah.
It had like 20 million people signed up to play, mostly in China, signed up to play before launch. Many more than that have played it now. It's made like $400 million. I think just on mobile. Maybe more than that if you include consoles too.
Yeah.
So overall has just been like a smashing runaway success. But, you know, at what cost?
Yeah.
I'm enjoying it. Like, it's a fun game. I'm, like, interested in maybe playing more. The gameplay is not that complicated. There's a lot of inventory systeming that I think I have maybe not been fully explained yet.
Yeah.
Which is probably for the best. But for now, it's like, oh, I don't find this game especially challenging, so why would I care that much about the gacha stuff? Like, I'm happy with the character. Why would I ever want to get rid of Buddy Gal? So there's that. But it's an enjoyable game, and especially for a game that's like, yeah, like thinking about even if it looked half as good as it looks on PlayStation on mobile, that'd be pretty game changing, I feel like, for at least my experience of mobile games.
Yeah.
So kudos to them for that. And do I need to feel guilt for enjoying it for free when I know that the gambling mechanics are what is making this game possible to create?
Yeah, I don't know. I still don't really know how I feel about gacha. I mean, I feel like there have to be systems in place to prevent dangerous behavior, which I'm sure this does not have. But I don't really know what those systems would be. Just speaking for myself.
Yeah, it's difficult, right?
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, I definitely generally prefer monetization systems that let you know what you're buying, right?
Yeah.
And I think I'll always prefer that. But I don't think gacha's going away.
Well, no, and it was kind of sad, you know, I got to do my first couple of pulls with stuff I had earned in-game, and it was kind of fun, but only because I didn't know what anything was.
Yeah.
I was like, that all sounds cool. Oh, look, I got 2 characters. Like, that's fun. But I do, you know, the frustration of it, I'm sure, gets... How do you balance that, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you want the cool new character, right, that all your friends have, right?
Mm-hmm.
All your friends managed to pull, like, I think Zhao was a recent one that I saw on Twitter. All the artists I follow have been consumed by Genshin Impact, so I see a lot of Genshin Impact on my timeline.
They all have interesting style. I appreciate that even, like, the eye patch man knight character that I've met is dressed in just, like, absolutely impractical Like, it's not just the women of Genshin Impact who are in their, like, frilly, why would you wear this combat costumes. Like, no,
Yeah.
the knight definitely also. It's like a frilly, why would you wear this
I did see a
costume.
thread earlier this week or something that was like someone going through and evaluating all the outfits just based on like fashion, which was funny.
And yet they don't. I saw an article in Forbes. That's how you know a game is starting to make money, when Forbes starts to write about it. Talking about how Genshin Impact doesn't actually have any kind of, what am I trying to say? It's not customization. That's not what I'm looking for. Cosmetics. There it is.
Yeah.
It doesn't have any kind of cosmetic system, which made me think. I was like, okay, this game is making a ton of money. So, of course, like, realistically, they're never going to scale back the amount of money they make. However, it feels like a more equitable way to do this would be to diversify your revenue stream a bit so that you have paid cosmetics so people can see what they're getting as one stream, and then you can up your odds in the gacha, so maybe people don't spend quite as much in the gacha, but they have more characters to buy cosmetics for.
Yeah. I mean, that's interesting. Yeah. I mean, the thing with cosmetics, though, is, like, that is entirely about looks and not at all about how the game plays. So, if anything, I would prefer cosmetics to be gacha and being able to buy characters, you know?
I guess so. It depends, though, on... I don't know, I don't have a clear idea at this point of, like... What am I trying to say? Of how hard, like, of how necessary it will be to have fancy characters and fancy items to proceed in the game. As much as I enjoy collecting them all, this is something I enjoy in my games, it's not something that is ever going to drive me, I think, to spend money. Like, real money. And so, unless I'm going to hit a point in the game where it's just like, I absolutely can't progress, like, whatever, I'll go forward with my sort of, like, plain looking, nobody looks plain, I don't know, whatever, my only uncommon characters, and that'll be fine. Buddy Gal will lead the way.
How does it work, by the way? Can you, like, switch between characters on the fly? Or
Yeah,
do you
it
just
seems
play
to
in
me,
one?
so right now I only have 4 characters, so I don't know what happens when you have more than that. But right now I have a character assigned to each D-pad, so I can switch. So Buddy Gal...
If you get more, you probably have to, like, set up your party.
I'm sure.
I assume.
Yeah. Yeah, because Buddy Gal fights with a light sword. One of them fights with a heavy sword, and then right now I have 2 archers. But one of them is like a flame archer, and one of them is a lightning archer.
Oh.
Elements are a big thing in this game, too. Overall, so far, I'm finding it a little more I hate this is blasphemy. I'm finding it a little more my speed than Breath of the Wild. Just because all of the things that I found particularly irritating about Breath of the Wild are not really a factor here. Like, my weapons don't break.
Yeah. That would suck.
Yeah.
If you get weapons in the gacha, but they have durability.
That would be brutal.
Like, you can just get the really rare ones, and you just literally never use them. They're just there to look at.
There's also a bunch of... there's just controversy galore around Genshin Impact, right?
Oh, yeah.
Which is so funny. It's just like this... If you just look at it, it's this very inoffensive seeming, like, floaty girls doing floaty fighting game. But... Okay, so other stuff. So, like, for a while, there was this, like, anti-cheat software that was maybe spyware? We'll never really know.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's just... Like, that's how a lot of anti-cheat systems work.
Right.
And that's why they're kind of disliked. In that, like, to really effectively check whether you're cheating, it kind of does have to be active, even when the game is not active. But that's creepy, so you don't really want to do that.
Yeah, especially for, again, I know it's how the game makes its money, right? But it's like mostly a single player experience. I realize there is a multiplayer, like you can go raiding with your friends kind of co-op thing, but that's co-op. It's not like... it feels especially gross to me that the anti-cheat is really about making sure everybody gives us every drop of their money that we're entitled to, and not about... It's not really hurting anyone other than the company's bottom line if people are cheating. No, not that that's not a real concern, of course, but I think it further ups the ickiness factor that it's like, oh, like, it's not like this is affecting anyone else's experience. It's just that I might be cheating to make my pulls better and spend a little less money.
Yeah. Anyway, MiHoYo has said that that issues relating to the cheat system, and also games reading your clipboard, have been fixed now.
Which is good.
Yeah, there are various other, like, security issues that they've dealt with in various ways. There's also, it is created in China, so they are subject to certain censorship policies. So you may find certain words muted or censored in your in-game chat, such as Hong Kong and Putin.
Yeah. So, if you're willing to kind of close your eyes and hold your nose a little bit, it's a fun game. Try not to spend your money on it, probably.
Yeah.
But I've been enjoying it. I will probably play a little more just because I need a low-key game to play sometimes. My equivalent. My Apex Legends. Emma called us filthy casuals in this house this week.
I was kidding.
She's not wrong.
I watched a story summary of Act 1, I guess. The 1.0 and 1.1 release. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of words happening, was my impression.
Yeah, there's a lot of words.
A lot of words.
And,
like, a lot of people who have more than one name.
Oh, you have to start, like, every time you want to, like, talk other conversation trees, you have to, like, start the conversation with them again. There's some quality of life stuff that could be improved. But it seems like this is a game that they have... I mean, right now, there's 7 nations, right? So far, there are only 2 of them. So they've definitely got long-term plans for this.
Yeah.
And, why wouldn't they? Long-term money for this.
Yeah. Just keep making characters, keep making weapons, keep making new locations. They're successful enough. I can't see them ever dipping off enough to make them not successful at this point, so.
Yeah. Well, are you ready to mash it with Vampire?
Yeah.
Vampire,
They're
gotcha.
Vampires.
Gotcha, Vampire.
Count Dracula has a 0.00001% chance of getting pulled. And that's the game.
But we'll multiply it by 100 after you've spent $10,000.
Yeah. I don't know how many zeros I said, but it'd be 1 less.
2 less.
2 less. You're right.
I'm trying to think of, like, how can I turn, like, tabletop and how can tabletop and gacha work together?
There's some common terminology. You roll,
right.
Right. You roll for something. There's an element of chance and uncertainty there.
So maybe, like, the idea is... Okay, so it takes place in the world of darkness, as the Vampire the Masquerade universe is known, where vampires and werewolves and demons are running things behind the scenes. And you... this is going to be a Yakuza game. I'm sorry. I need to not make... I was going to be like, you're assembling your clan, but it can't literally be clan creator.
Yeah.
But that's fine. That's where I'm going to start, and I'll iterate from there. So you're like a new vampire, a young idealist vampire, and you're fed up with the ways of the Camellia, right? It's like the council.
Sure.
And you're gonna start a new clan. There are some clans outside of like the clan council in Vampire the Masquerade, like a part of the ways you can like recruit some vampires through story missions, but you can also recruit other folks through. It need to have some kind of like suitably like semi-European pretentious name system, where you get to like roll the die of fate.
Gotcha.
Stop that. Don't just say it in an accent.
Gotcha.
No, where you like roll the die of the cubes of fate.
Sure.
And it'll generate, like when you recruit a vampire, it generates the stats for them and some physical attributes. And you can pay real money to roll again.
It's like, so there's not like characters, you just get like a vampire that has certain stats.
I have not yet figured out what the gameplay of this game is, so maybe there are characters. I just haven't decided.
I feel like gacha is not very appealing without like characters you want. You know, if it's just like, oh, I got beefy vampire. You know, if he's not like a named Vladimir, the beefy vampire.
That's fine. They can have names.
But I'm just saying, if the stats are random each time, so if I get Vladimir the beefy vampire, but he's really smart for some reason, I don't.
Okay, so maybe so like Vladimir the beefy vampire always has like stats within a certain range. But I can get like a platinum tier of Vladimir, and you might only have a bronze tier.
Oh, I see. So there's tiers by the character too. I don't love the idea of having multiple Vladimirs. That doesn't feel like on with Genshin's ethos.
I guess that's true. I want the roles to be like character sheet tied though, so I don't know.
I mean, maybe just like they have character sheets, but like they're always the same when you roll them, but like then that's just another character sheet you have to manage.
I guess that's true.
Menus, the game.
That's fine.
Featuring vampires.
We can do that. That's very tabletop. Menus the game.
Sure, yeah.
Maybe I should get meta with it, and it's like you are a player of a tabletop RPG playing Vampire the Masquerade, but the vampires.
So we're just bringing the worst part of Genshin over. is what you're saying?
I know, you're right. I'm just kidding. But okay, fine. So you're vampires, but we're gonna throw it back. Like the 2000 game takes place half in like 12th century Prague, so we're gonna do more like not contemporary.
Sure.
To capture like the fantasy setting of Genshin. So you're like fantasy world vampires, right?
Yeah.
But it's like a dark world, right? It's a world where there's not very much sunlight. It's kind of like a vampire paradise, right?
Okay.
And however, you've discovered that the remnants of humanity, most of humanity has been wiped out, but the remnants of humanity are trying to build an artificial sun. And there's division among the clans about what to do about it. Some of them want to murder all the humans. Some of them are like, that's fine, it won't work. Some of them are like, we'll just live in the night and stay hidden. Because we don't want to lose our last shreds of humanity and go into crazy bloodlust.
Okay.
And you are a young idealistic vampire who believes, maybe at first anyway, that you can take different morality paths.
Sure.
Am I creating Project Triangle strategy? Who knows?
Yes.
But you get to roll to recruit vampires to your side. And yeah, they have pre-built character sheets. Yeah. And you get to run around doing vampire quests.
Sounds fine to me.
And it's going to make $20 billion.
I think that's a requirement of any mashup. Actually, it has to make like half as much as Genshin's made.
Why?
To be accurate to like the respective financial successes here.
That's fair. That's fair. I'll take that. That'd be all right.
I mean, making half as much as Genshin is already, like, way more money than you could possibly know what to do with, in my opinion.
It'll release pretty buggy on launch.
No.
Why not?
Because we can't. It's got to make half as much money as Genshin. It can't be buggy.
Okay, the word Vladimir and bloodsucker will be censored.
Okay.
Like, we'll pick some random vampire-related words that you, like, can't say in the chat.
Interesting.
Also, to play the game, you have to change your lock screen to a picture of your vampire.
Sure.
That's the, like, security setting.
Okay.
Word of mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Marketing. Also, we'll do some we'll do, like, a Twilight crossover. That will just... Everyone will be like, the game has sold out, but we won't care because we'll swim in our piles of money.
Yeah.
So there you have it, folks. Do you want to play our kind of weird vampire roller Breath of the Wild-like? Breath of the Wild for vampires.
Cooking, except it's like mixing different types of blood you collected.
Oh, I don't think the cooking minigame is going to make it past testing. I'm sorry. We're going to cut that. Have you played Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, and did you find it to be appealing, or did you just find it to be impossible to play? Have you played Genshin Impact, and how much money have you spent trying to get the cutest character that you possibly can? If you want to answer any of those questions, or just, keep up with all the latest updates about the show, you should follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Talk This Podcast. You can also visit our website, www.talkthispodcast.com, where you can read all about the show, check out the games that are in the hat that Emma's about to pull from, or check out our blog, where you can read long-running series Clickbait Boyfriend and Split Screen. Finally, and most importantly, why don't you subscribe to the show? We are on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, Pandora Podcasts online and on the app, Overcast, Pocket Cast, anywhere that you can find podcasts, you can find Talk This. So while Emma gets the games ready to pull, next week is a side quest. We're back to the beginning of our 6 weeks, so it's my turn to choose. I don't know what it's going to be yet, to be honest. Maybe I'll just talk more about vampires and say more things that Emma doesn't think are actually true, and that she's right that they aren't actually true. Maybe that'll be what the side quest is about.
Sorry.
Maybe I'll try to put more words into Emma's mouth next week, and then have her rightfully correct me when I'm wrong.
Listen, I'm a stealthy girl, and I won't stand for the slander.
Maybe I'll just talk about stealth modes, and I'll do a 40-minute monologue on why all stealth modes are bad. Emma will be like, but what about this one? And I'll be like, oh, I guess that was okay. And that'll be the end of the episode. Anyway, you'll have to tune in next week to find out. But in 2 weeks, Emma, what's the old game that we're going to be talking about? Do the gacha roll.
Yeah, our gacha roll for the old game is going to be Heavy Rain.
Sean! Get ready for 30 minutes of me doing random Sean's. Great.
And our new game is going to be The Avengers.
Nice.
Oh no. Sorry, I was just thinking of mashups.
Bruce! Who else? What is...
I can't believe Steve. Iron Man was the killer all along.
Steve!
Alright, look forward to that. The episode will be just shout men's names, oddly.
One-syllable men's names sprinkled throughout. Well, folks, thanks for tuning in to another episode. We've had fun. Tune in again next week. And until next time, I hope that all of what you release is playable, and that all of your gacha pulls feature at least a 4-star drop.